In this video, I will show you how to refactor a function that does many things into 6 classes that each does a single thing. We will go from this to this. The resulting design is more object-oriented. I don't want to argue which is better, but I do want to show you what an object-oriented design can look like, because I think examples of that are rare. The example we're going to refactor is a function that returns the next version number given a set of existing version numbers stored as git tags. In the first example, we ask for the next release version in the 1.0 series, given that no tags exist. We get the default version 1.0.0. In the second example, version 1.0.0 already exists, and we therefore get version 1.0.1. In the third example, we ask for the next pre-release version. The next release version would be 1.0.2, and so the first pre-release version of that release is 1.0.2-1. In the fourth example, pre-release 3 already exists, so the next pre-release is 1.0.2-4. Let's begin the refactoring. Here we have the next version function that we're going to work with, and it also has a few tests which are run automatically when I save. So if I change something here and save, the test runner will give us the failure over here. So this way we can do the refactoring with the safety net of the tests. So what do we have here? What is the first class that we're going to extract from this? So there's a lot of behavior going on here. So we have some part that is about matching. Then there's another part about storing different versions and finally extracting a new version from that. Then there's a bit about formatting. So I think I'll start with this pattern matching, extracting versions stuff. So the first thing I'll do is extract a class which I will call series. So it will have methods for parsing versions from a specific series and maybe also formatting versions in a specific series. So the first step is just to create a class. And it will take the series as an argument. So let's do that, and let's create it over here. And this will probably fail because we're using the series object here, so let's just see that it fails. And now we have to replace all the series with series.series. And that should work. And it does. So in every place where we do series.series, there's an indication that that functionality probably belongs in the series class. So let's see what we're going to start with. Maybe I want to start with the formatting down here. Seems like a next easy step. So in a series we can say format release, and the release just have a version, and format release looks like this. And now we don't have to do series.series, but we just do self.series, and I name this version. And we should be able to use it down here and say series.format release next version. And we can remove that one. And we will do the same for a pre-release. It has a version and a pre-release number. And the formatting should look like this. Self.series, version, and the pre-release number. Let's remove that one and see. All tests are still passing. So this refactoring worked. So what else do we have? We have serious dot something up here. We're doing serious.serious here. So let's move this pattern into serious. Just start with just moving that field. Let's say self.version pattern is, and here we can use the serious passed in. Now we get a failure saying that version pattern is not defined. So over here we need to do we did serious.version pattern. And again, when we're doing serious dot and accessing a field, it's an indication that this behavior should probably move to the serious class. So this right here is about matching a version, either a release or a pre-release in that serious from a tag name. So let's see what we can do. Let's copy all of that and extract that to a method called serious.parse version from a tag, something like that. Now we can do self.version pattern here. And we have two cases or three cases. Either we match a pre-release, we match a release, or we don't match anything at all. So let's try as a first step just to return tuples. So in the case of a pre-release, we return the version and the pre-release number. In the case of a release, we just return the version. And otherwise we return none. So let's see if we can use that one up here. So first of all, let's do a version is serious.parse version on the tag. That should not blow up, and it doesn't. And if version is something, we check if the length of the version is 1, then we have a release. Otherwise, we have a pre-release. That doesn't blow up. So in the case of a release, we should do this. Versions append release. What's the name here? And we can remove this else clause. That works. And for the pre-release, we do version is called release now. And let's see. The pre-release number we can just access like this now. And we can remove all of this. And all tests pass, so it still seems to work. The other thing that I'm thinking of is this collecting of versions and pre-release numbers that are then used to determine the next version. So let's extract that to a class that we call versions, maybe. And the first step is just to say versions is versions and just move these fields to the class. This will of course fail. So everywhere up here where we call versions, we need to say versions dot versions. And everywhere where we say pre-release, we need to say versions.pre-release. That should still work. We just extracted those two fields to this class. So what we can do now is to create more descriptive names for the cases where we add versions. So in this case right here, we're adding a release. So let's instead just say versions.add_release. And the implementation should be this. And let's call it version down here again. There we go, that works. And similarly, we want to do for pre-releases. Versions.add pre-release, release, pre-release number, and we should do all this. I'll call it release now, pre-release number. And then all cases where we do versions.something, we can just do self instead. That works. And let's rename this one to version. So now we have a special purpose collection object, kinda, that we call versions. We can add releases and we can add pre-releases to this object, and then we'll keep track of them in a way that is useful for us later on. Before we're extracting this next version functionality to versions, I want to do one thing that will simplify that process and also make this logic almost go away. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's create a class to represent a release and a pre-release. A release just has the version. And a pre-release is similar, but also has the pre-release number. Next, I want to implement functions on these version objects to add them to a versions object. So I'm going to say add to versions, and the release will do versions add release with the version that it has, and this should be called pre-release. And the pre-release calls add pre-release with its version and the pre-release number. So what we can do in these cases now is that we can create a release with a number, and we can call add to versions. That will replace this one. That works. And we can do the same for pre-releases. And we also need to pass the pre-release number. That works as well. But notice now that the second part here, the add to, is exactly the same. The only difference is how we create this version object. And that can also be done in this parse version. So down here, instead of returning tuples with different length, let's just return an object, which in this case is the pre-release, and in this case is the release. That will fail. And the version now, we can just call the add to method to versions, and we can remove all of this. Nice. We still have this check right here, which we can also get rid of by using some more polymorphism, object-oriented design thingies. So let me show you how to do it. So this will fail saying that non-type has no attribute add to. So in some cases we don't get a version back. So what we can do in parse version when there's no match is that we can return no match version. No match version doesn't exist. So let's just create it. Let's say no match version. And now we're going to try to call oops, wrong name. So no match version. I wanted to put it here next to other versions. Yeah, so now it's saying that no match version object has no attribute add to. So no matter what version we're getting back here, we're trying to call add to. And if we get no version back, we can just do nothing. So that's one technique to get rid of if statements by implementing this do nothing behavior in a special in a different object. And we can even simplify this, or I'm not sure if it's simpler. We can do it on one-liner saying parse a version using the series object and add the version that we get back to the versions. And we do that for every tag that we have. The versions object should really have a method to get the next version. So let's see if we can move that functionality to versions. So get next version. And let's pass in if we want to have a pre-release or not. And let's just copy all of this, I think, for now. Oh, let's copy that one as well. So if we want a pre-release, let's just return a pre-release object with the next version and the next pre-release number. Otherwise, we return a release object with the next version. And let's see if, just make sure that it doesn't blow up. So we do versions.get next version. It does blow up because we need to pass the pre-release argument as well. Versions is not defined. All right, so now that we moved all this code into the versions class, we need to replace these references with self instead. And there we go. It doesn't blow up. So next, what we want to do, we get a version object back, and what we want to do is to format it according to the series. So we need to call different format methods on a series depending on if it's a pre-release or a release. So let's implement that in the version object. So we can just say get next version dot format using this series, and we can do a return here. It fails saying that pre-release object has no attribute format. So let's add that. Where are you? So this will be similar to this add to. So we do format, we get series, we return series dot format pre-release, And now we get the same error saying that release object has no attribute format. So let's add that and call format release with the version. And that works. So now we can remove all of this. And I'm thinking I have one more class that I want to extract, and that is a tags object. So let's see how that will look like. So tags. And we initialize it with a list of tags. And then we can call a method called getNextVersion. We pass the series and if we want to pre-release or not. And it will do something like this. So we'll create the series, create the versions, loop over all the tags in self.tags. We'll parse the version, add it to versions, and then do this, yes. And up here, we can do return tags, get next version, series, pre-release. So the only thing that is left in this next version function is that we create a tags object called getNextVersion, and that's it. Everything else has been extracted to classes. Let's review the classes that we ended up with. The tags class is wrapped around a list of tags. But what often happens when you put a collection into a class is that it will start to attract functionality. So in this case, the getNextVersion was a quite good fit, I think, to put on the tags object. Next we have versions. It's also a special collection class for storing different kinds of versions and then being able to do something useful with all the collected. So the interface is like we add different versions to the object and then we can query it. What would the next version be? Then we have the series class. It's all about parsing versions from a series and formatting versions in a series. So notice the symmetry between the parsing and the formatting. So for example, in the regular expression, we match the series and then we match a dot and then we match a version number. And in the format methods, we output the series and then followed by a dot. So there's a symmetry between the formatting and the parsing, and it's all contained in this class. Finally, we have the version classes that represent different kinds of versions. They don't contain any logic almost, but they are there to allow this polymorphic style of object-oriented programming so that we don't have to check in multiple places. Is this a release? Is this a pre-release? Instead, we put that decisions in the polymorphic add to and format methods. Let's also take a moment to appreciate the test suite. It provided a safety net for all the refactorings, and it's so nice to have that. And we were also able to do all the refactorings without changing the tests at all. I hope this example was useful for you. Thanks for watching.